Good afternoon, Tom Johnson, along with our mayor, Alex Rounaghi, another edition of Fair Game Laguna. Alex, I'm sitting amongst your peeps right out here in the middle of a parking lot by Gigi's Bistro. Just had a great lunch.
Good.
How you doing?
I'm great, Tom. How are you?
Good. Some good stuff happening around town.
Yep.
Um, Last night you had a city council meeting.
Good. It didn't go
Started
that late,
off.
which is always good.
What's that?
It's always good when we get out by 9 o'clock. So
Oh
it was
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. So you look rested. Anyway, so you kicked it off with a little study session on, the business community
Yep.
around downtown and things. Give us an update on that.
Yes. So we had a city council study session at 3 o'clock, and the Cosmont presented what a business survey that they sent out to the business community in partnership with the chamber and the city. And I think we funded part of it. And what the some of the interesting high level conclusions that I took away are one, our vacancy rate is very high in Laguna Beach. We're close to 9%. Um, what we have also very high commercial rents, which is you would think that those rents would go down as the vacancy rate goes up. That's economics 101, but for some reason that's not happening here. And part of what they discussed were recommendations for how the city could create, do more to fill those vacancies and to attract the type of retail and restaurant experiences that we want, that our residents want in town. Because what they did is they surveyed the residents also about their interests. And one of the big takeaways that it really wasn't news to me. The study sort of confirmed what I already expected, was that we have a very tough regulatory environment in Laguna Beach due to many of the rules that we have on the books. And the person who best illustrated that was Zach Cornwall, he graduated from the high school probably a couple of years before I did, and he started sandwich shop, and his family has Spigot Liquor right next to it. And it was almost a 3-year process for him to be able to open up the business. And under the code, he required, I think, 25 parking spaces. So he came during public comment and talked about that. And this is, I think, it's a less than 1,000 square foot sandwich shop. So it's crazy that we have these requirements that are essentially creating a code that's impossible to follow. And so because of he was able to take advantage of some historic stuff and different maneuvers and complicated ways to comply, and ultimately was able to open. But when you have a process like that is one, just impossible to follow, where you have so many parking requirements that are physically not possible. But then you have a conditional use permit process that lacks predictability, where someone could be paying rent for a business as they're going through the process, and then if they don't know the final out, if they think that there could be a discretionary decision where they're not able to open, they're not going to make that investment. And so I made a joke about how it's almost like you'd want to recruit businesses from that are led by people who you don't really like that much for dealing with our process. And for us as a community to attract the types of small businesses, because ultimately small businesses are what we want in Laguna Beach, but small businesses cannot survive a 3-year process. And so we need to really come up with some ways to modernize our parking requirements and look at our CUP process, and then also make streamline City Hall in terms of maybe having one planner who just focuses on these types of applications, because the delays are unacceptable. So it's something that the council is all in on, and the business community is all in on, and I think the residents are all in on, because nobody wants vacancies, and we don't want to be in a position where we have more vacancies.
So where will that go from here?
So there was no, it was a study session, so there was no specific actions, but there was high level feedback to the city manager to bring back some sort of an ordinance that would look at modernizing the parking requirements, and perhaps looking at some other efforts related to our code that make it hard for businesses to open in Laguna Beach. Of course, there's things in our code that we want to keep. We want, for example, the 36-foot height limit. We don't want high density over that. There's things that we want that are important as part of our code, but the things that are not essential, that just get in the way and add unnecessary bureaucracy and time, are the things that need to be looked at in a thoughtful way, but also an intentional way, where we're not just studying the problem because we know what the problem is.
Seems like great stuff and so needed. So
Yep.
good to get your arms around that. Hey, speaking of another issue in town that's kind of out there is, and it kind of ran its course through the election for the school board, is this swimming pool up at Laguna Beach High School. What direction's it going in? How long is it going to be? What's it going to be and everything? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, so as the city council earlier in 2024, we made the decision basically to not do a joint use agreement with the school district on what was then a 50-meter pool. And instead, we were going to look at a city-owned pool, building our own city-owned pool. Since that time, there have been some high-level discussions. I know that in the fall, there was an the previous superintendent had been, talking to our city manager about some sort of a lease agreement, and that, an offer was made about some sort of a lease agreement where for a certain amount of time we could lease the pool at a certain rate. And I think, I can't speak, that has not come before the city council, so I can't speak for the city council, but if I can speak as an individual, what I would say is that I think makes a lot of sense because when I look at over the past year since we made that decision about doing our own pool, I've come to the conclusion based on our budget, our, strategic, as we develop our strategic financial plan, that we don't have the resources or really the space to build a pool in the next 5 years. Maybe down the line, it's something that we can look at. But in the meantime, I think it makes sense for us to go in on this lease agreement that was previously offered by the school district, so that they can get that pool built because it's important. That pool, as it stands now, is dysfunctional and something that none of us can be proud of in our community. And so the 45-meter pool where we're coming in as in a lease agreement makes a lot of sense to me. And I really do think it's important as a city for us to provide clear policy direction on this so that the school district knows where we stand, the community knows where we stand, and then everyone can kind of move on and we can get a new pool built and move forward. So that's something that will be at our strategic planning session. I've asked one of the key things that as we look at our city is that we have a lot of priorities, and oftentimes as a city council, we have too many priorities. And part of that's because there's just a lot of things that we want to do, which is a good thing. But you can only do so many things. Staff can only take on so much, so many projects. We only have enough financial resources for a certain amount of projects. So one of the things that our city manager will be presenting for us are areas where we can provide policy direction so that we don't have these lingering issues. And this pool issue is one of those issues. So I've expressed my opinion about how I'm looking at it. I want to hear from the public, of course, but overall, that'll be a question that'll come before us at our Friday meeting, and then that'll probably come back as another agenda item during a regularly scheduled meeting. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that pool. But I think it's important that we are not, we're not just doing analysis paralysis for the next few years on something as important as that.
Good for you. It's a hot button, and yeah, we do need to bring some clarity to that. You mentioned this strategic planning meeting.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us an update on that? When, where, what's on the agenda other than the pool and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff?
8:30 a.m. City Hall on Friday. So it'll be an all-day meeting. The public is invited to attend. City staff will be there. The city council will be there. And the city manager will present based on a lot of feedback from council members, sort of a roadmap on how we move forward. What are the projects that we have the resource to fund, looking at our financial projections over the next few years and really positioning us as a city so that we can tackle some of these big important issues. We talked about last night at our city council meeting about updating our fire mitigation plan, and public safety is our number one priority. And as you know, fire is something that is on everyone's mind. And so we want to make sure that when those recommendations come before us, that we can be in the mode of implementing them and getting them done as soon as possible. We want to get our fire station in South Laguna. We need to get shovels in the ground, get that going. And there's so many other projects that are important. And the only way for us to be able to get those done is for us to prioritize them in a logical way with clear timelines and expectations of how we have the financial resources to be able to make them happen. So that's the goal of the meeting on Friday, is to give city staff clear policy direction about what the city council's priorities are, which is of course based on community input, and so that we can move forward and get things done and not just study things.
But you mentioned fire mitigation.
Yep,
One of the key people on that, dating back to 2019, was former Mayor Sue Kemp, two-time Mayor Sue Kemp, and still on city council and things like that. They're actually doing a luncheon for her, which I
yep,
think is great, honoring her, the Laguna Beach Women's Club, and it comes up in a couple of weeks. I'm sure you're going. I'm going.
absolutely. I wouldn't miss it.
So she's so
Yeah.
deserving, don't you think?
She's very, I mean, Sue works so hard on behalf of all the residents. She's someone who's always very responsive to people, and yeah, I think the city's lucky to have her. She could be golfing all day with you, Tom, but she's
Yeah.
working at City Hall and on behalf of the residents on the many important challenges, and as you noted, fires, the number one challenge. So we're all grateful for Sue's dedication to our city. I'm looking forward to the 14th when she'll be honored.
Yeah, my 2 cents is like with you, I got to spend every week with Sue during her time as mayor. And you talk about somebody that was so dedicated, is so
Yeah,
dedicated. And Sue, puts her heart and soul into this stuff, and it's she's so good for the city. So I hope a lot of people come out to support that. It's through the Laguna Beach Women's Club. I'm sure you can go online and find a link to that. And I think tickets are on sale through February 7th, but it would be nice to see a full house celebrating our former mayor. So good
absolutely.
stuff.
Good.
Finally, just a comment. Gosh, kudos to our police department. Couple of big things this past week. One was a fentanyl bust.
Yep,
Credit to a police dog, and I'm sure the police department that took the dog out there, but a big fentanyl bust on that that's still under investigation. And also, earlier this week at the Cinderbox Smoke Shop on Coast Highway, they made a fairly good bust on some marijuana and some psilocybin. So kudos to our PD.
absolutely. Yeah, they're doing great work, and I don't want to get into too many details, but I think what we're seeing in terms of the overall crime levels are heading in a positive direction. So I think that we'll be seeing something shortly come out on that. But very grateful for the innovative community-based policing that we do in Laguna Beach.
It's all your leadership, Mayor.
No,
So
it's not because of me. No.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Hey, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to join me, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Be
Looking
well.
forward to it, Tom. Thank you.